Hey, how's it going? Welcome to the Football Diary podcast this week. Just wake me up when the season ends, will you lads? I've had enough now after losing to Newcastle. I have had enough of the season, but many haven't. And there's a lot of clubs still fighting for Champions League football, especially now there's 5 places confirmed, 4 English clubs. So I think Myles has suddenly got a glint in his eye that the season might actually turn out quite positive in the league, whatever happens in the cups. So we are going to focus on that this week, I think, and go through the clubs that are from 3rd down to 6th and just assess what their run-ins look like, look at the results this weekend and try and figure out if we can see what the table is going to look like in our opinion. If you agree or disagree, amazing, get involved, have a conversation with us and we can talk about that as well. But let's start with the team that's currently 3rd in the Premier League table, guys, which is Nottingham Forest, who by all accounts had a rubbish weekend, losing 1-0 to Everton in dramatic late fashion as well. So let's have a look at Forest's results, look at their run-in, look at their likelihood of staying in the top 5. I'll start with you, Myles. What did you make of the game, first of all? A lot of criticism from Forest fans about Nuno's setup and about them being too defensive. Obviously, Alanga didn't start, which I think was a mistake, and it looked like they were trying to just, I don't know, contain for a while and then hit on the break, and it just never came, did it?
Yeah, it was an odd way to kind of face this Everton side. I think if you were playing a Sean Dyche side, you never would have done that. And I don't think they really anticipated what a David Moyes Everton could do to break them down. And they didn't offer enough going forward to kind of put the pressure on them. And you're right, not starting Alanga in the kind of form he's been in and the pace that offers you in behind Everton's fullbacks, who aren't necessarily the defensive stability that they need, that could have been a really good avenue to explore. So it'll be a really frustrating result for them. And looking at their recent form in the league, as we will, it adds to the inconsistency. So it would definitely be frustrating for Forest fans that this isn't somewhere that they wouldn't have wanted to drop points in this fixture, really. A home tie against a side that, yes, they are on the up. And actually, if you look at Everton's form since Moyes come in, I think they're 5th in the league in the form table, which is crazy, but it is still a side that we know can be got at. So yeah, frustrating one.
Yeah, it was a game where I think looked like nothing was going to happen for Forest, did it, Dave, really? And that's the frustrating thing, because they can hurt teams and you expected them to do something. Everton, to their credit, contained really well and took their opportunities and actually were on the front foot for large periods, weren't they? And they deserved their goal, I think it's fair to say. Do you think Forest fans are right, first of all, to be critical of Nuno for this result and the setup for the game against a team that was in the bottom half of the league, but also concerned for their Champions League place at this point?
Yeah, it's strange, isn't it? I think we've seen a lot of teams, especially over the last few weeks, struggle against Everton. We've seen Arsenal drop points. We've seen, obviously, United struggle against them as well, although it's not difficult to be honest, should be being in teams like Man Utd. Yeah, I think the way they set up, it actually proved quite difficult for Forest. I think in that 4-4-1-1 formation, they kind of prioritised a low block and they had the likes of Gay and Decore really pressing high in those areas where they were struggling to get through those passing lanes, Forest, where they normally do. Find a lot of joy, I think, through Gibbs White and Hudson-Odoi. In those wide areas, you looked at Mykolenko and both fullbacks actually kind of playing quite narrow, so they were struggling to get on those overlaps and find space in behind like they normally do Forest. If you look at what they created, it's not a great deal of note. I think their XG was 0.67. Their season average is about 1.5. So it says a lot. I mean, if you look at the game in the whole, it's largely dominated by controversial VAR call, or no VAR calls, so decisions that are very much sort of on the edge. I think you look at obviously the Beto one for Everton, and then I just think you could have had 2 penalties in there, one for Everton, maybe 1 or 2 for Forest. But again, I think it was decided by VAR, potentially just sitting on the fence. Referees sitting on the fence, and again, it's these decisions are deciding games.
Yeah, big games they've lost now in a row, Myles. Obviously against Aston Villa, which I didn't feel like must win at the time, but it's looking more and more like it when you look ahead at the fixtures for Forest. And obviously a game against Everton, which maybe a month or so ago, you probably would have had them down to win this quite comfortably, considering their attacking firepower. But now the road ahead looks really tough for Forest, doesn't it? Is this something that you think they can turn around? Because we know they've got it in them. Looking ahead at the next couple of fixtures to begin with, can they get back on a good footing again? They've got the FA Cup in there too, so there's a lot on their plate right now, isn't there?
Yeah, it's frustrating for Forest because it felt like for the longest time they weren't in the conversation. They'd secured it. It was done, really. I mean, Forest fans won't have thought that. They'll always be realistic about their side. But as a neutral look in, you thought that 4th and 5th were up for grabs. And it does now feel like 3rd is up for grabs. I mean, Forest are 3 points ahead of Villa and Villa are 7th. So that's a frustrating position for Forest to find themselves in when you think about how much they were blowing teams away. And they need to get back to that quite quickly. I mean, they've got a great fixture coming next. They go and play Spurs. So they have to win that. They absolutely have to win that because then Brentford come to the City ground after that. And Brentford are doing so well away from home at the moment. I mean, they've just taken a point against Arsenal. And if Forest drop points in that game, then it really does open the conversation up again for them. And the FA Cup run is such a magic thing for them. But it does feel like maybe they could have just done with one area of focus. And if they don't get top 4 or top 5 sealed, it will feel like such a loss at this stage. It wouldn't have 4 weeks ago. But now you're so close. And there really is such fine margins in it that these will be the games that they rue. I mean, if they'd beaten Villa last week, we're talking about, they've done it. They're 3rd. They've sorted it. There's no way. Now, all of a sudden, 4 teams competing with them now for that space. That's hard. That's hard.
I can't tell whether it's a blessing or a curse for their next fixtures, up until the last game at least, to be against teams that aren't also involved in this Champions League race. You know, they're teams with relatively little to play for. So you mentioned obviously Spurs next. They've got Brentford, then Palace, then Leicester, then West Ham, and then finally Chelsea on the last day, which could be huge. It could be a complete write-off. We don't know yet. And I don't know if it's actually more valuable to be playing the teams around them and start taking points off them in the process or not. What do you think, Dave? Are you thinking that those teams in the next run of fixtures up until the final day are winnable because that potentially they are not necessarily teams that are fighting for anything? Or do you think that actually perhaps there's no pressure there for them, so they can just, go at Forest and do what Everton did, essentially?
You could say that about a lot of teams in this league, though, couldn't you, really? It almost feels like the season's drawing out to like a massively underwhelming close, if we're being honest, for quite a few teams. We mentioned how a couple of matches, I thought the Liverpool game today, even though Liverpool were looking to win the title, felt like a testimonial at times. It was just so slow in pace. So, I don't know if it will be a lack of experience that might cost them going towards this. If they got any form of Europe, that'd be a massive success for Forest, and let's hope they don't fall off, massively. It's there are a few difficult games left, notably one at Palace and at West Ham away. I think there'll be 2 difficult away games. You'd expect them to beat Spurs next. I mean, the pressure is on, isn't it, really? This is a massively high-pressure game because they're expected to go there and beat them. Because you look at Tottenham at the minute, we've been saying all season we don't know how Postecoglou is still in charge at the helm, but
and they'll be coming off the back of Europe as well, Spurs, won't they?
So it's the good thing is obviously teams around them are dropping points as well, with the exception of Villa at the minute, who are on this crazy run in the league.
Well, you say that, Dave, but we're going to move on to Newcastle next, who are now up into 4th, which changes everything, doesn't it? They beat, obviously, Manchester United pretty convincingly 4-1 today as we record. And yeah, it's a pretty miserable game for United fans because there were so many errors, but they were clinical. Newcastle to their credit, weren't they, Myles? And they've got players like Harvey Barnes coming in and playing so well and finishing so brilliantly. And that midfield looks really, really strong. And they've got that extra game in hand, which with form taken into account, looks like it could really give them that momentum to cement 3rd place, if not any higher than that. That's an incredible achievement for Newcastle, isn't it? And they look like probably, I guess with Villa, who we'll come to in a moment, the team with the best form right now.
Yeah, and it's funny because you think back to when Guardiola first came to England, he always talked about how the League Cup was such an important thing because it was like getting that silverware early in the season gives you the confidence for the run-in, and it feels like we're seeing that with Newcastle now. Like the whole city is lifted by that trophy. So now that they're kind of back in the conversation so firmly, because there was a period, probably around Christmas, where we were saying, yeah, Newcastle, they look really dangerous. Then they fell off a little bit and kind of lost the kind of momentum we thought they'd picked up. And now they're right back in it again. I mean, a win against Palace midweek and they're 3rd. That's a huge turnaround for them. And you have to say, as long as they keep everyone fit and they don't lose Isak for the rest of the season, or Tonali doesn't get a long injury for the rest of the season, they look favourites to me. They look like the best side in that race now. I mean, they tore you guys apart today, that second half. Yeah. I mean, you definitely helped them out. There was definitely a bit of a charity element to United's defending. But generally speaking, Newcastle have been so clinical in those moments, and that's why they managed to secure themselves a trophy, and it's probably why they'll secure probably third, if not fourth, in the league, really.
It looks huge, though, that game against Villa, doesn't it, on the 19th? That and the Arsenal game as well. Not that Arsenal have got much to play for either, but again, we don't know if they're going to get any worse in the league. But yeah, that game against Villa looks huge coming up, doesn't it?
They got Chelsea as well, which is another big one. Like, Newcastle's fixtures are a very odd mix because you don't know what to expect from Crystal Palace because they've been in excellent form themselves. You saw them against City this weekend take a 2-0 lead and then kind of terrible defending handed it back to City, which is frustrating. But they could be there as a real test for Newcastle. Only Arsenal have won at Villa Park in the league this year, so they've still got that journey to make as well. I mean, they've got a pretty good record against us recently, so I'm not sure they'll be too worried about it. But then Brighton and Chelsea as well, and Arsenal. They're not easy fixtures for Newcastle, but you wouldn't put it past them. So
not easy fixtures, though. No, I mean, I think that's the thing. It's such an unknown.
Favourites. I think even in the last game of the season, it's going to be very unpredictable if it comes to that last game because you don't know what you're going to get at Man United at Old Trafford. Forest obviously still got to play Chelsea, and then Newcastle have got Everton. If Everton have only lost to, since David Moyes has come back, they've only lost to Liverpool in the top 6. So they're not going to be any pushovers either.
I think it's the squad of Newcastle's, like you say, Myles, if it stays fit, they're probably one of the best quality squads in contention, and they have won a trophy as well, so they've kind of got the bit between their teeth, and I think for me that makes Newcastle probably one of the favourites to finish, maybe third, in my opinion, and we'll talk about the final lineups of the teams later on. But Dave, what did you think of Newcastle's performance in the United game? Try and put aside your United lens for a moment and look at it from a Newcastle United perspective. What did you think to their clinical edge, I guess?
I think it just overpowered United. I think that front three caused them a lot of problems. And Jacob Murphy and Isak, Harvey Barnes, I think they've done admirably quite well, considering you look at the last few weeks. A lot of the energy they've put into some of these matches, obviously off the back of the cup final as well, really just overpowered them in terms of their physical, stature and the intensity that they showed pressing United, and it forced them into mistakes. I mean, it's not alien to this team, is it? We've seen some of the mistakes made over the last few weeks. United, what's cost them, but this is a Newcastle side that have shown this season that on the day against even the best sides in the league, they're capable of overpowering any team in the league. And there was obviously that first goal was outstanding, I thought, from the pass from Isak and Tonali. It's top technique to really just drill that perfectly, and the power he gets on it. Binder's got absolutely no chance. So I don't know if we learnt a lot that we didn't already know about this Newcastle team. I think what they've shown since the cup final, there's not been any hangover from that. They've been showing the same consistency that they've had in the large part of the season. And like what we've been saying the last 2 or 3 weeks, they're probably one of the favourites really to be getting Champions League. I'd be very surprised if they didn't, to be honest. I think it's going to be a massive game against Villa, isn't it? That could really be a season decider. So
I think so. I think that's the game where we will probably have a different assessment of how this race looks once that's been played. But yeah, Newcastle looking very strong. Before we move to a break, guys, let's talk about Manchester City. We've touched already on their performance against Crystal Palace, coming down from a 2-0 deficit and winning the game convincingly in the end, 5-2. And obviously Kevin De Bruyne has just announced that he's leaving the club at the end of the season. I think the club they told him he wasn't going to feature, basically, so it was kind of not in his hands, but he played brilliantly in this game. And I think City is starting to show elements of the next phase of their evolution under Pep Guardiola. And that second half against Crystal Palace, Myles, was a real marker, wasn't it? Like, it was a sign of what these newer players, Marmoush especially, can do at their best.
Yeah, they're not missing Erling Haaland, are they? They're still sticking 5 past Palace, who have been a side we've been praising. I mean, it was a Palace side without Mark Gahey, and that makes a huge difference, definitely. But generally speaking, yeah, City look like they're building something again. And it's interesting to see whether De Bruyne will be the only one that goes in the summer. I think there'll probably be more changes than that. There's still an era of, will Guardiola kind of have his eye on anything else, I think. I know he signed the deal this year, but the way this season's gone, you never know. Champions League's not secured for them. And they've got a really interesting run in as well. I mean, they've still got to play Villa, which will be a really interesting game. Villa have obviously already beaten them once this season. That could be huge for them. We never know what we're going to get from City, which is such a weird state to be in, because for the longest time, you just felt like there's no point even watching the City games. It's already a foregone conclusion that they're going to blow away whoever they play. I mean, yes, they got a result in this game, but you have to wonder how they found themselves 2-0 down so easily as well. And that's the thing that other teams in the race will be holding on to and looking out for, that while this rebuild is taking place, and yes, players like McAtee and O'Reilly, they look excellent and they look like they're going to add a lot to City going forward, it's still inconsistent. And you definitely don't bank on them being the kind of stand-up performers each week. I mean, you mentioned Marmoush there. He's the one for me, and they'll be relying on him staying in such good form for this run-in. Now, I think he's got 6 Premier League goals already, all of them at home, which is a really interesting thing. Like, how is he adapting to this City side? He seems to really relish playing at the Etihad, which is not something I'm sure many players will talk about, but hey ho. And this change in De Bruyne moving over as well. I mean, you don't really need him as your playmaker when Ederson's got 7 Premier League assists now. But
that's impressive.
There's things, yeah, it's ridiculous. There's things for City to hold on to, and there's things that they can base the rest of their season on. It's just whether they can kind of address this inconsistent form in the league that we've kind of seen from them since. Wow, when was it that this all started going wrong? October, November now. It's crazy.
It feels like most of the season, but no, they started pretty brightly, and you forget that. And the slump went on for so long that it did damage their season, we thought, almost beyond repair. But I mean, credit to them for trying to pull something back out of it and actually still being in contention and still being in the semi-final of the FA Cup as well. City do, Dave, still look like a threat, don't they, when they're performing well? And 2-0 down to Palace, I was wondering how bad this could get, but Palace kind of undid it for themselves to a degree as well. But City showed how ruthless they can be even without Erling Haaland in the side as well. But looking at their running, Dave, obviously they've got Everton at Goodison, which Goodison's days are numbered. So every game at Goodison now feels like it could be difficult. They've obviously got Aston Villa as well, which Everton and Villa seem like protagonists in most clubs' races, don't they, for the Champions League, which is mental. Then they've got an FA Cup semi-final against Forest, which could take a lot out of them. You just don't know. But their actual final stretch, City, looks the easiest, I think, out of the lot. They've got Wolves, Southampton, Bournemouth and Fulham, which, I mean, that could be a coast, couldn't it, at that point? But how do you rate City's form, first of all, and their running, looking at those, Dave?
Yeah, I think there's a good case that they could win those final 4 games, isn't there, really? You look at the teams that are coming up against, potentially probably not going to have a lot to play for. An already relegated Southampton team, a Wolves team that's, let's be honest, probably safe now. Fulham on the last day could potentially throw a spanner in the works, but yeah, these next 2 games are huge for them. I think it'd be encouraging for Guardiola that they came back in the way that they did, because we've seen them so many times this season go behind and kind of really struggle to show a reaction. And come from behind and win. But they've done it, and I think, yeah, they really did pose some problems for Palace in those wide areas, created some wide overloads, and I think in those key areas where De Bruyne managed to get a bit of space and time, just created, we saw him at his best, and not nice to say as a United fan, and obviously it's great to see him play how he does at times. You know, you can only admire the way he plays, but yeah, they really did struggle defensively, and showed lapses in key areas of the game. I think that Maeda, you look at that foul that he makes for City's first goal, that really turned the tide of the game massively for them. But yeah, I think looking at that run-in, they probably have got the easiest fixture list of the lot. I don't think there's any easy any team has a completely easy run. If we're being honest, I think there are some tasty fixtures in there, and that's what makes it all the more fascinating for us. And hopefully that's the case for the last 2 or 3 weeks of the season.
You also can't say too much about City's fixtures being easy. Let's not forget that before this, they failed to beat Man United in their last game, which I think that tells you all you need to know, doesn't it, about their running?
Well, final word on City then, Myles. Looking at their running, obviously the final 4 games look like they could be relatively comfortable with the teams involved. But the next 2 games, obviously Everton and then Villa, it's probably make or break in them 2 for them, isn't it, in some ways?
Yeah, the Villa game being at the Etihad is huge for them, I think. I think the fact that they've got the home fixture there probably makes them favourites for it. But again, I just don't know what to expect from a City side. Like, I kind of in jest make a comment about the United game, but I did watch that last week and think they looked terrible. And then the second half of this game against Palace, they looked back to being Manchester City. I mean, there was a moment where De Bruyne put the ball in for Marmoush, and I think Henderson produced like a brilliant save. But it was a textbook Man City move and felt like, yeah, they're back in that moment. But it's moments that you see that in. They don't have it in them for 90 minutes, it feels like. So, yeah, the last 4 fixtures that you mentioned, they're basically on the beach fixtures. I wonder whether that almost puts too much pressure on Man City. And I also wonder whether teams still feel a bit of value in playing Man City this year. Like, every team kind of feels like, no, this could be our moment to get a win over Pep Guardiola. And every coach is definitely going to feel that, aren't they? So they're still vulnerable, I think. I still think there's points to be played for in their fixtures. They probably do have the most favourable. And I think when we come to our predictions later on, that will probably show for all of us.
We've got 2 more to go through, and I think we'll start with the next one in the table, which currently is Chelsea. I don't know how long that'll be for, but they're in 6th, Myles. Chelsea looking probably like the lowest ranking team that are going to finish out of this pile at the moment because their form is so poor, so unpredictable. And this weekend was no exception, was it? This Chelsea was not a team that looked like they were Champions League ready, was it?
Has anyone seen Cole Palmer? That's the thing I can't get my head around.
I know.
Their form has dropped off a cliff since his has, and that can't be sustainable for a club that's spending as much money as they have, for them to be so reliant on one player's output and their whole form to seem to hinge on that. It's really noticeable. Chelsea, I mean, not beating Ipswich at all this season, that's going to bite them, I think. Their fixture that they have left are definitely the hardest of all of the teams still fighting for it, I think. And they look the worst. You're right. So, yeah, I think they've probably counted themselves out. And again, earlier in the season, they were a team where we were going, whoa, they could be challenging for serious honours this year. And it just seems to have disappeared. But they'll probably win the Conference League still and be happy, won't they?
I honestly don't know, because the Conference League at this point feels like a distraction for the important thing, which is qualifying for the Champions League again. And Champions League qualification, I think, for Chelsea, as you say, financially is so important because their model is completely unsustainable without it, which is why it'd be kind of interesting to see what would happen if they didn't qualify. Would there be player sales? Would players like Palmer move on, who is definitely a higher level in him than Chelsea at the moment, I think. But their form has been so indifferent, and that's been the case for a while, hasn't it, Dave? For the whole second half of this season, Chelsea have just really slid down the table. This game against Ipswich, who are a weird bogey team for them this season, showed some of the good, but also loads of the bad of this Chelsea team. What do you make of them? They're a bit of an enigma, aren't they? I'd never know what to expect from game to game from them.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a strange one, hasn't it? Because we were talking about them, probably even 10 games ago, but they look like a side that were finally coming together under Enzo Maresca. And then Myles is right, all of a sudden Cole Palmer goes on this long run of not scoring goals, and they lose any sort of threat and attacking power that they did have. Nicholas Jackson gets injured, obviously is out for quite a while, and they just look lacking of ideas. They're a team that are capable of dominating games through possession, and that's the kind of coach and manager that Maresca is. He likes his team to retain possession of the ball for large spells of the game, but they just lack any sort of incisiveness or attacking creativity in them to decide games. And it's a dull watch, isn't it? If we're being honest.
Yeah, a little bit.
And they've shown over the last couple of weeks, 2 or 3 weeks even, that they get caught out in moments. This is an Ipswich team that largely struggled this season. You go 2-0 up away at Chelsea, and I think there's going to be there's going to be another clear out, if you ask me. And I don't whether they can afford to do that is another thing, because you look at the expenditure that's already happened, then it's going to be fascinating, to be honest. It's going to be a fascinating transfer window. We say that all the time, don't we, with Chelsea? I mean, it's a bit of a comedy, if we're being honest now.
Well, I think the length of contracts they've got for their players and the value has pretty much declined for the majority, I would say, of players that they've signed in recent years. That's the challenge, because they'd have to sell players and make money on them. With the contracts these players are on, that's probably not going to be the case. So they almost need to invest in the team they've got, and it's just not working, is it, Myles, at the minute? Like you say, their running is by far the most difficult. Some really big hitters in them final games, as well as this Conference League tie against Legia Warsaw, which, you would expect them to go deep, if not win that competition too. So it could be a very odd season for them from here on in.
Yeah, and it's another one where all of their recruitment hinges on, are they back in the Champions League or not as well? Like, if you look at the level of players Chelsea signed in the summer, they did a lot of business for Maresca. How many of them have been successful that they signed this season, really? I'm not sure you'd say any of them, would you? Like, Caicedo was the year before, and he's kind of been the standout player for them this year. Neto's not really done anything. Sancho's not really done anything.
Yeah.
Drewsbury Hall doesn't even exist anymore, it seems. Like, it's an odd transition for Chelsea, where I don't look at that side and think they're anywhere near Champions League quality. So the fact that they've even kept themselves in the conversation for this long surprises me. And I think it speaks more on the inconsistency of the other teams in the league than it says for them. So yeah, they should go and win the Conference League. That guarantees them a place in the Europa League next year. They'll probably get one of those through the league anyway. So that's improvement, I suppose, on last season. So they'll have to take that in this kind of rebuild that they're going under. And they took on a coach who's completely untested at this level. So if he can secure them a European trophy, let's call it that, and a place in the Europa League next year, it's not bad.
I don't know. Maresca at the start, his whole success, which it was at the start, there was plenty of reasons to kind of laud the way the team were playing, the way he was rotating, the way he was managing European football, the way he was keeping the squad relatively happy. These were all things that we were saying, yeah, he's doing a decent job so far. And while things were going well, that was always going to be the case. But you then start to look at his very black and white management style and the way he does rotate players and cast players aside quite ruthlessly. And you do think, is it a team, really? Like, the best, I think, squads, the best teams that are doing as well this season are actual teams. You can see cohesiveness. You can see them wanting to fight for the manager and fight for the players around them. Like Aston Villa's a case in point, which we'll come to in a moment. Liverpool, even this season under Arne Slot, have continued to be a team. And we've got players there that are signing new contracts and still want to be invested in it. How many Chelsea players are actually happy at Chelsea right now? I couldn't tell you, because it looks like a miserable place to be. And I think that's probably what will let Chelsea down. It's just that, I don't know, end to the season will just continue, and the fixtures will come thick and fast and they'll struggle. But that's my 2 pence worth on Chelsea. I want to get on to Villa next. Some would say we saved the best till last in this conversation, but they're just lower in the table. So at the minute, not quite the best. But on form, obviously, barring this Champions League result against PSG, Villa have been fantastic. And we will talk about PSG before we end the pod, but not just yet. Let's talk about the fixtures in the league, Myles. A comprehensive win this weekend, which we expected, obviously with some changes there too, again, which we expected. So the squad and the team should be fresher for the next leg against PSG. But how do you rate Villa's chances of maintaining their league form based on what you've seen? Big question.
Oh, I don't even know where to start with it. I mean, the fixture list is difficult. It's a really difficult run of fixtures. I mean, the Newcastle game, like you said earlier, is going to be huge. Then we go on to City straight after that. So, I mean, there's 6 points that if we take, they're not just... It feels like more than 6 points, doesn't it? Because it's the teams that we're trying to face off with. Juggling that along with the two cup competitions, like we're the only side in England that are fighting on three fronts right now. That is hard. I mean, that might end this week with the PSG tie. I think a lot of people expect that it will. But yeah, I still think we've got a great chance of it, to be honest, because the depth of this squad is showing. 3 substitutes scored in this game for us this season. The first time that's ever happened for a Premier League side. 3 players come off the bench and score. That's brilliant. And it shows you what this squad has, because yes, we rotated, but it didn't look like a weakened side against Southampton. I was alarmed when I first saw the lineup, because I was thinking, guys, it's Southampton. We don't need everyone here. Like, give Tielemans and Konsa a game off for a minute. But look, that's the options that we've got in this squad. We've got the depth there, and we we should be able to compete with anyone for this place. I think the business they did in January, we've talked about a lot, attacking wise, makes us a really threatening prospect for any of these teams. And we're giving people something to think about going forward a lot more often. So, yeah, I think although we have that tough run of fixtures, and I think it's more difficult than City's, definitely, like we talked about, it still feels like it should be in Villa's hands because they can take points off their rivals.
Yeah, well, the next 3 games, Dave, after the Champions League tie, look really difficult, don't they, for Villa? And I think Myles has said this is probably the main reason why he's less optimistic than he probably could be. So how do you see those games, Dave, playing out? Obviously, Newcastle's the big one at Villa Park, which I think is huge, but Man City at the Etihad. And actually, to be fair, even Fulham, I keep discounting Fulham from the Champions League conversation, but if they win, I think, their game in hand, they're still 3 points away from you. So
I think we could count Fulham out just because of the amount of teams above them.
Yeah, possibly.
Too many.
But apologies to Fulham fans. But yeah, okay, looking at those fixtures, Dave, I think that obviously the next 2 are key, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, even the Bournemouth game, I mean, they're away at Bournemouth. We've seen how dangerous a team they can be at times. I know they've lost their way a little bit the last few weeks, but I won't discount them either. It's obviously, I think a lot was going to hinge on that PSG game. I think if they somehow get a result out of that, I mean, I can't see it myself, but can you imagine? Obviously, that carries them obviously into the next few weeks of the season as well. Rotating the squad's going to be a big, mission, I think, for Emre, and obviously let's not forget about the FA Cup either. It's going to be a really interesting few weeks, and a couple of results could ultimately ruin the season or.
Listen, Dave, I'm gonna press you for some more decisive answers than that, because that's too much on the fence for a neutral fan. Villa, Man City, Villa, Newcastle. How's those games going to go? I need to get an answer from you, man.
I think it's going to be a draw, the Newcastle Villa game.
Still sitting on the fence.
I think it'll be a draw. I can see probably 1-1 or 2-2.
Yeah.
I think there will be opportunities. I think Newcastle will look to expose Villa at the back and playing out from the back. I think you would look at the intensity that they played. And with their front three and how physical they are with their midfield and Joelinton and Tonali at the centre of that. They can pose any team problems. And I think they will look to make an impact in that way. But I don't think either team want to risk too much because there's still so much to play for. I think a point for both teams wouldn't be a bad result, for being honest.
That's the worrying thing about both those fixtures, isn't it, from a neutral point of view? Dave's right. Both that and the City game, both teams could go, all right, I'll have a point here. Let's just, no one's going to gain any ground here. Let's see how the rest of them play out. That I am a bit nervous about that.
And then, the City game, it's very dependent on what City turns up, isn't it? The last few weeks, they've just been such a mixed bag. Villa could easily hurt them. We've seen how devastating they are in transition. I think that's the way they'll want to play. And they've not just got quick players, Villa. They can bully you. You look at the likes of Rodgers, Jacob Ramsey on his deck. These are real physical players, and they will take you apart if you give them the opportunity to do that. So I'm going to say probably Villa win that. I think they'll probably beat City.
Yeah. I think from then on in as well, I think, like you say, the Fulham game away at Bournemouth, again, can be difficult, but I don't think Bournemouth will be particularly driven to get a result out of that, apart from just having a good finish to the season. Spurs at home, again, it's Spurs. We don't even know if Ange should be there at this point, do we? And then Man United at Old Trafford on the final day of the season, which, I mean, a definition of a write-off for United. I think we'll be on the beach by then and waiting for the season to end. So
if you boys beat us on the final day and it costs us a place in the Champions League, I'm not doing this podcast anymore.
I think I feel apologetic, mate. I'd be a bit gutted for you, to be fair.
If one good performance you have in your belt for that game, I will be livid.
Right, okay.
It could be. I mean, you look at the run of each of those teams, and here you mention, there's arguably probably not an easy run-in out of those last few teams. I think there could be a lot of drop points, I'll be honest, from all teams.
Yeah,
but that's what the league's been like all season as a whole, hasn't it? It's been so back and forth between every team. It's really hard to judge fixtures this year because the middle's so congested, like we've talked about all season. The quality is so well distributed amongst that I can't call Villa Fulham very well. I can't call Bournemouth, Man City very well. Those fixtures are tighter than they've ever been, it feels like, in a Premier League season, between the kind of the teams fighting at the top end.
Yeah.
And the ones that you would normally go, well, they'll probably be 10th, 11th, 12th. Well,
I think
they might fire up.
Yeah. I think a key difference for that, for me, is you look at some of the coaches that some of these teams have got in, like Brighton, Bournemouth, Fulham even, Marco Silva, the job he's done there. You look at tactically how well they are set up and how well they're coached. I think that's a key difference in previous seasons now. They know how to beat some of the bigger teams, and probably where they are the underdogs, it suits them in ways.
But that's where Villa should have an edge in this conversation, because I don't think anyone would dispute we've got the best manager. Out of the four, well, other than Guardiola, sorry, probably should throw that in there. Out of Newcastle, Forest, Chelsea and Villa, you're taking Emery over the other coaches. I mean, Nuno's doing a fantastic job at Forest, don't get me wrong, but Emery's a much better manager than any of them, I think.
Well, I feel like this is new territory for him, though, to be fair, isn't it? This is new territory for Nuno to be competing at this level, and I feel like that's where his naivety is showing at the moment, is that his team aren't being set up in a way to take the initiative and to push his team to victory. They're kind of almost failing into the end of the season in some ways, whereas Unai Emery has got loads of experience to draw upon and failures as well, where he should have done differently. So I think you're right.
We don't need to talk about that.
No. But yeah, I think Villa are an interesting one. I think for those next two games, there's no defeats in there. It's a very interesting story. And as you say, the unknown of the rest of the fixtures is what is making this conversation so fascinating. And so to finish it, Myles, you've run the numbers, you've put the results in you think are going to happen, and you've got a table of sorts to call upon. So go through yours from third down, assuming you think Arsenal aren't going to slide any further. From third down to seventh, what do you think?
You don't want me to start from top?
I think that's a given now, isn't it? Title race, really? The media need to calm down.
I definitely had Liverpool and Arsenal in the top two. And then what I'm going for, I don't like it necessarily, but I'll take it. City third, Newcastle fourth, Villa fifth, Forest sixth.
Okay, so Forest fans, but Myles is saying that your team are slipping right out of the conversation.
Oh, I didn't even think about Chelsea there. Chelsea seventh as well.
Chelsea seventh, yeah.
That goes without
saying. Do you know
saying.
what? I think all of us are going to probably say that Chelsea will slide out of the picture completely and finish seventh out of that group of teams, right? But Dave, what about you? Going from third down, what are you thinking?
I think Newcastle might finish third, to be honest. You look at where they are now, obviously 3 points off, obviously win their game in hand and they go third. And we've spoken about the difficulty of the fixture list for all teams, really. They've got the momentum. They're full of confidence. I think they'll probably finish third. I think Forest potentially fifth. I'm just going through the teams I can see in front of me now, as in the order of the Premier League table. And then I've got Man City finishing fourth, and Aston Villa finishing sixth.
After all we've been through, Dave.
I know.
Come on, mate.
It's so unpredictable, isn't it?
It is. I think if any of those big games go either way and they're not a draw, then it's a different picture. If Villa beat City, for example, if Villa beat Newcastle, for example, then Villa suddenly look like the team that could finish third or fourth.
That's what I mean. Mad. I mean, we're having this conversation now. I honestly feel that we'll be no closer to having a definitive answer until we get to probably 2 or 3 weeks before the end of the season.
I think even the final day.
That's what I mean. I think we could be having this discussion every single week, and I hope that's the case. I hope it would be a shame now if it was to fall off and somebody was to. I think the great thing is that there's 3 places there, Champions League places. If we're assuming that Arsenal are going to secure that second place, which you'd imagine that they will do. There's 3 places up for grabs, and it's so tight.
Yeah. Do you know what? The more we've spoken about this, I've kind of changed my mind as we've done it. It's interesting, isn't it? Because I see the fixtures and you imagine how they're going to play out. But I think you're right, Dave. I think Newcastle will probably finish third, just by virtue of the strength of their team, their squad, and their recent performances. I think they're looking really impressive. I think Manchester City in fourth, Aston Villa in fifth. And therefore, obviously, Nottingham Forest in sixth. And again, it's painful to say that, really, because we've rooted for Forest since they got promoted. It was just great to see Forest back amongst the elite again. but their final run-in is difficult. I think for a team that has suddenly found itself on the ropes a little bit, unexpectedly as well. The last 2 games have been a bit of a sucker punch for Forest. I'm not sure how they'll respond to that, and they needed something out of those 2 games and got nothing. So, yeah, this run-in now looks a lot more difficult for Forest. So, again, apologies, Forest fans. We have plenty who watch us. This is painful to say, but I think for Aston Villa, it might be the in. Forest's form might be Villa's in. And again, it depends on how any number of those games go that Villa face, especially against the Newcastle and the City. Those games are going to be definitive, aren't they? But I can't see them be anything other than draws, which helps nobody and kills the conversation in some ways. So, yeah, all to play for, it feels. Let's finish the pod on the Champions League then, Myles. We touched on it briefly. PSG results. It's a tough game, wasn't it? A tough watch. Really, really good team with some excellent players. Kvaratskhelia is a magical player, isn't he? And I can't really say how you can have any complaints about the result, first of all. It was a tough game, wasn't it? How did you feel?
I was so proud of them for most of it. I think Villa played excellently as well in their own way, because for all of Paris's dominance in so many key areas, we held them at bay for a really long time. And it took moments of absolute brilliance to break us down. Like, Doulé's goal is sensational. There's not a keeper in the world that's saving that. Kvaratskhelia goal was, again, just something out of a textbook of beauty. It was amazing. The way he glides past the defenders. I think obviously Disasi only just coming off the bench to kind of face that so early on. It's really frustrating. It's really, really frustrating. And then the third goal kills it. That's the frustrating thing for me. If we'd got out of there at 2-1, yeah. I'm not saying I think we'll do it, but there's something to play for still. What worries me is a 2-goal deficit isn't huge when you're the home side, but there was nothing in that game that made me think it will be a completely different tie at Villa Park, because look at what they did at Anfield, this PSG side. There wasn't a huge drop-off for them there. In fact, they probably looked better. So, yeah, it's hard to say. There's definitely things Villa can take from this. There's definitely positives that they'll take from it. And Emery still seems quite confident, which is interesting. I don't know whether it's something that he just has to say for the press and to psych his players up. But
maybe.
I kind of always trust him when he says these things. There's still a part of me, even if it's a 1% chance, there's a part of me that goes, yeah, but we could. Maybe. I think it'll be a completely different 11. I think it'll be a completely different style. We have to go for it now. Whereas I think the whole point was to go to Paris and not let them steamroller you. So now at Villa Park, we will take the game to them. I think we'll see a really different and more attacking lineup. And that could be really good, because a lot of the time, Paris didn't have anything to worry about. So they were able to play this free-flowing game through the middle. They were able to activate their wingers, because what were Villa offering going forward? In the first half, Rashford was running in behind and it scared them. There was a couple of moments. And look at Rodgers' goal. We go 1-0 up. That was an amazing thing. And honestly, I can't explain to you how good that felt, but it showed that there was something to do. And in the second half, I think they decided, no, let's just make sure we close this out now. And they stopped looking for that run, and Rashford stopped kind of progressing out wide. So I think we'll see a really different side
do you think,
on Tuesday.
Do you know what I found hilarious? As I saw that Kvaratskhelia goal, and I was like, oh, he's been beating it, isn't it? Post there, or is it? It should be doing it a bit better. See the replay.
No,
I was like, no, fair enough.
Yeah, that's still
absolutely. He drilled that. He couldn't have hit it any better. It was like Giggs' goal against Arsenal in the semi-final. It was like absolutely smashed against the other side of the bar. It's got absolutely no chance. Do you think Martinez will look at that Doué goal and think, I thought it was a great strike?
No, I think it was just a great goal. Yeah,
I actually think Martinez had an absolutely brilliant game.
Yeah,
I think he was excellent. I think he might be frustrated with the third goal, because obviously he gets sold with the dummy. But even then, he manages to get up quick enough to have a go at stopping it. Like, I thought he was fantastic. I think it's frustrating that he can play so well and they still put 3 past us. And Kvaratskhelia, the difference he's made to this PSG team is unbelievable. I mean, you're leaving out Bradley Barcola because of these 2 wingers that you've got, and that's a huge step in itself. It's meant that Dembele can play more centrally. So I think a lot of people in England saw Arsenal play PSG early in the competition and saw how narrowly they got through the group and thought, well, okay, this isn't a side to worry about. I'm telling you now, they look to me like the team that will go on and win the whole thing. And
Yeah.
that's frustrating because it means that I don't see us getting past them on Tuesday. But you never know. You never know. I think there's definitely things we'll do differently. Watkins will start. I'm pretty sure of that. And I think he has to. We've talked a lot about Watkins on this podcast, and I think he's horribly disrespected by a lot of football fans, including Villa fans sometimes. I don't think he gets the credit he deserves for being an excellent forward. And I think he will bring a lot to our game plan if he plays against PSG, because the way he presses, the way that he defends from the front, we really missed that in the last game. I think if actually that means Rashford can go out wide, well, all of a sudden Hakimi and Mendes, they cannot be allowed to get so far up the pitch. You have to have some sort of threat behind them. And because Rashford was playing centrally, we were kind of playing a bit with Ramsey and Rodgers wide. They're not natural wide players. They do come more centrally, and it means the fullbacks were way too involved for PSG. I would love to see us in this next game. I'd probably start Bailey as well. I'd probably go Bailey and Rashford out wide, push the fullbacks deeper, and then maybe even try Maatsen and get him to come and offer something there. It would be very full throttle. It would leave us a bit vulnerable at the back. But what have you got to lose at this stage?
It's
I think
interesting.
Watkins could be the heart of that.
It's interesting. I saw a headline on one of the French newspapers or websites saying this wasn't Aston Villa, and it wasn't what they expected to see, a team sitting so deep and not actually going for it as much. And I was surprised that Villa didn't try and score more than one, and it didn't look like they were trying to score more than one. And I think once they did go 1-0 up, it felt like they wanted to A, defend that, but then also B, it was completely impossible against this PSG side to defend that at the Parc des Princes as well. It was a very difficult ask. So I do hope we do see something more full throttle from Villa. They've got to go for it. They've got nothing to lose. There's no shame in being defeated heavily by this PSG team as long as you go for it. And I think that's what I think Villa fans want to see too, right? Just a real effort to get on at least a level footing would be amazing. And I know that's a big ask. You've got to score first, but definitely you've got to not concede really in many ways. And yeah, that's the challenge. How you feeling?
I think it's fair for people to say it didn't seem very Villa in the first leg, but it's very Emery in a European competition. I think it makes a lot of sense. You're the underdog and it's the away fixture, so you have to make sure that things are tight. I do think the way he's talking already, I think they want to go for it at home. And they have to, you are right. And that's exciting. It might not work, but I will love watching the game. The thing is, it was a very entertaining game of football to watch because it felt like a chess match. It was waiting for PSG to just produce a moment, and that's what it took. Fortunately, that would work against some teams. It genuinely would. I would fancy us playing that way against a lot of very good European sides. That's how we got results against Bayern. That's how we did all right against Juve. Like we've got that in our locker, but PSG is just too good. They've got individuals who are capable of those moments, and we've got to be careful that we don't get hurt by that at Villa Park. All I'll say is, can we really see, I don't like to say it out loud, their two wingers had the best games of their career, it felt like, against us, didn't they? Can you rely on them doing that again? Because that's what it will take to break us down again, because we've been excellent defensively at Villa Park in the Champions League.
Yeah, that's the challenge.
You know Martinez
the balance
is there.
Yeah.
You know he's up for it. I would probably change the back four. I wouldn't start Cash. I don't think that's the one that makes sense. I wish we'd started Konsa at right back in this one. I think he makes loads more sense than Disasi. He's got more pace in that position. He's more familiar with it. I'd rather see Konsa right back and Disasi as the right and centre back than the other way around.
I don't know if Konsa gets beat like...
no, I don't think he does.
Like Disasi does against Kvaratskhelia. I thought that's the only thing there. He wants to get inside on that foot and drill it the way he did. I thought that was, I wouldn't say poor defending, but
it's naive
because he disguises it very well. But I thought he could have done better there.
He needed to grow into the game as well. Like I say, it was 48 minutes and he came on at half time. Like that's the frustrating thing. He didn't have time to catch the pace of the game. The change made a lot of sense because Cash was already on a yellow. And Cash can be a bit erratic at times, and the last thing we needed was to go down to 10. I maybe would have made the change at like 55 minutes though, just to kind of, because Villa are not very, we've seen this a few times this season, the start of the game and the start of the second half, we get hit quite a lot. I'd rather we'd had a bit of stability to get us underway and then thought about a change maybe, but it is what it is. And if that third goal doesn't go in, you walk away going, it's a bloody good result and we actually could do something here.
That's true. The optics change a lot with a 2-1 back to Villa Park, don't they? So, I mean, still all to play for Villa, really, but they've got to play for it. They've got to fight, and that'll be the challenge and the interesting thing for neutrals to see. Probably interest is not the right word for you, Myles. I think it's going to be an absolute, a real nervy occasion. But looking at the other games in Europe as well, obviously, Arsenal completely thumping Real Madrid with a Declan Rice-inspired performance. 2 amazing free kicks from him. They are 3-0 up going into their second leg. Talking about United as well, Dave, before we go, obviously that performance against Newcastle doesn't help the optics of the coming fixture against Lyon, but apart from that terrible calamity from Onana, it wasn't a bad performance overall, and it feels gutting that is what took the headlines when actually we did okay to even come away with a draw against Lyon. It should have been a win, really. How are you feeling about the second leg?
We should get the job done, but again, like, this is a fairly decent Lyon side with a lot of threatening players, and like you say, a lot of our performances this season have been masked by individual errors, by a number of players, and that could easily be our undoing again. So I'm never confident going into a game now, especially this season. I've not been confident going to any game, and I think you expect the unexpected because that's just the way we are as a team.
Yeah. On that positive note, guys, we're going to call it a day for this podcast this week. We'll look forward to talking about those European games, hopefully with a positive light, and we'll keep an eye closely on this Champions League running in the Premier League because it looks, as we've spoken about throughout this whole last 45-50 minutes, a really fascinating run-in. But until then, guys, until next week's pod, enjoy it, hopefully. Have a good one. I'll see you then.
Cheers, mate. See you later.